Commander Jiwon stood on the bridge of her warship, staring at the endless darkness of space. She had seen many things in her 40 years of military service. Strange planets, dangerous enemies, ancient ruins that no one could explain. But she had never seen anything like what her sensors were showing her now. The screen in front of her flickered with strange readings. Energy signatures that didn't match anything in the database. Patterns that seemed almost alive, pulsing in the void like a heartbeat. Her 6 arms tensed, a natural response for her insect-like species when facing the unknown. "Commander, should we investigate?" asked her second officer, a young warrior who had barely seen 5 years of service. Jiwon clicked her mandibles, the sound echoing in the quiet bridge. "Send a probe first. I want to know what we're dealing with before we get closer." The Orion Collective had ruled most of the galaxy for thousands of years. 17 different alien species worked together under one government, one set of laws, one shared peace. Jiwon had spent her entire life protecting that peace. She wasn't about to risk it by rushing into unknown danger. The probe launched, a small metal sphere that shot through space toward the mysterious energy source. It traveled for 10 minutes before reaching the location. The moment it arrived, every screen on the bridge lit up with data. "Commander!" her communications officer shouted, all 4 of his eyes wide with shock. "The probe found something. It's a beacon." "An active beacon? From who?" Jiwon moved closer to the screen, her mind racing through possibilities. "Pirates? Smugglers? A lost exploration ship? That's the problem, Commander." The officer's voice shook slightly. "The writing on the beacon? It's not in our database. It's not any language we know." Jiwon felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. In all her years of service, she had encountered dozens of languages from hundreds of worlds. The Collective's database contained every known form of communication in the galaxy. If this writing wasn't in the database, it meant one of 2 things. Either someone had created a completely new language or this beacon was very, very old. "Get me historian Daehyun," she ordered. "If anyone can read ancient writing, it's him." While they waited for the connection, Jiwon thought about the stories she had heard as a young warrior. Tales of a species called humans, a race that could survive anything, fight anyone, and never knew when to quit. Most adults dismissed these stories as myths, legends created to scare young ones into behaving. But Jiwon had always wondered. The galaxy was vast. Who could say what was real and what was fiction? The screen changed, showing the glowing form of Daehyun. He was a luminar, a being made of pure energy and light. His kind lived for centuries and spent most of their time studying history and ancient texts. "Commander Jiwon." Daehyun's voice was calm and smooth like music. "How can I help you? We found a beacon in the dead zone. The writing on it isn't in our database. I need you to translate it." Daehyun's light pulsed brighter for a moment, a sign of excitement in his species. "Send me the images immediately." Jiwon transmitted the data. She watched as Daehyun's form flickered and changed colors, processing what he was seeing. Seconds passed. Then minutes. The silence on the bridge grew heavy. Finally, Daehyun spoke, and his voice carried something Jiwon had never heard from him before. "Fear." "Commander, where exactly did you find this beacon?" "In the dead zone near the edge of mapped space." "Why, what does it say?" "It says..." Daehyun paused, his light dimming slightly. "It says it's from humans." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member turned to look at the screen. Jiwon felt her hearts beating faster in her chest. "That's impossible," she said. "Humans are legends. They're not real." "I've spent 30 years studying the Terra myth," Daehyun said quietly. "I've read every ancient text, examined every old ruin. Commander, I believe humans were real. I believe they existed thousands of years ago. And I believe they left our part of the galaxy for reasons we don't understand." Jiwon wanted to argue, but something in Daehyun's voice stopped her. "What does the message say?" "It's a warning and an offer." "Let me read it exactly." Daehyun's voice became formal, like he was reading from an ancient scroll. "To those who find this, humanity has returned. We have been watching. We have been waiting. And we have been building. If you seek peace, respond on this frequency. If you seek war, you will understand why we were feared." The words hung in the air like a threat. Jiwon felt every instinct in her body screaming danger. This wasn't just a message. It was a challenge. "They claim they've been watching us?" Jiwon asked. "For how long?" The message doesn't say. "But Commander, if they've been watching and we haven't detected them, that means their technology is far beyond ours." Ji-won thought about this. The collective had the best sensors in the galaxy. Their ships could detect a single vessel from light years away. If these humans had been watching without being seen, they were either masters of stealth or the message was a bluff. I need to report this to High Counselor Minji, Ji-won said. This is beyond my authority. Commander, wait. Daehyun's light pulsed urgently. Before you do, there's something you should know. According to the legends, humans didn't just disappear. They were driven away. Our ancestors, the old empire, tried to enslave them during their time of weakness. The humans fought back with such fury that the empire never spoke of them again. They erased humans from history, turned them into myths and legends so no one would know of their failure. Are you saying our ancestors started a war with these humans and lost? I'm saying our ancestors tried to conquer them and barely survived. That's why humans are legends, Commander, because the truth was too shameful to record. Ji-won closed her eyes, all 6 of her eyelids sliding shut in sequence. She had devoted her life to protecting the collective. She had fought in 3 wars, stopped 2 rebellions, and earned more medals than she could count. But standing here, reading this message from a species that shouldn't exist, she felt something she hadn't felt in decades. Fear. Send this information to High Counselor Minji immediately, she ordered, and transmit all our data to the Council of Stars. They need to see this. What about the beacon? Her second officer asked. Should we respond to the message? Ji-won looked at the screen, at the strange writing that spelled out humanity's return. She thought about the legends, stories of beings who bonded with predators, who could survive in environments that killed other species, who fought with a fury that bordered on madness when protecting what they loved. If even half the legends were true, responding to this message could change everything. No, she said finally. We don't respond, not yet. This decision needs to be made by the Council, not by me. Set up a perimeter around the beacon. I want ships watching it every moment. If anything changes, I want to know immediately. As her crew moved to follow orders, Ji-won stared at the message on her screen. Somewhere out there, beyond the known galaxy, humanity was waiting, and they claimed they had been building for thousands of years. The question that terrified her was simple. Building what? The answer, she feared, would soon become clear. And when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The Council of Stars chamber was the most beautiful room in the galaxy. Built from living crystal that glowed with soft light, it stood at the center of the collective's capital station. 17 seats arranged in a circle, each one designed for a different species. Today, every seat was filled. High Counselor Minji sat at the highest point, her crystalline body reflecting light in rainbow patterns across the walls. She was over 7,000 years old, though few knew this. Most crystalline lived only 1,000 years. Minji had seen empires rise and fall. She had witnessed wars that consumed entire star systems, but the fear she felt now was unlike anything in her long memory. The beacon has been verified as authentic, she announced, her voice ringing like bells through the chamber. Historian Daehyun has confirmed the writing. It is indeed from humans. Silence greeted her words. Then chaos erupted. Impossible, roared Captain Hyunsu, a Thoraxian warrior whose reptilian scales gleamed red in the light. Humans are myths. Stories we tell children. I've seen the data, countered Counselor Suman, another crystalline whose scientific mind always sought truth. The beacon's technology is real, and it's far beyond anything we possess. Then it's a trap, Hyunsu hissed, his tail lashing behind him. Someone wants us to believe in ghosts, so we'll lower our guard. Ambassador Subin raised one delicate hand. The Whisperkin female was smaller than most beings in the room, her aquatic features giving her an appearance of fragility. But her mind was sharp as any blade. With respect, Captain, we cannot dismiss this. If there is even a small chance humans exist, we must investigate. War should be our last option, not our first. The Whisperkin would say that, Hyunsu spat. Your species has never understood the value of strength. You negotiate with enemies instead of destroying them. And your species starts wars it cannot win, Subin replied calmly, though her gills fluttered with suppressed anger. Perhaps that is why we have survived as long as we have. Enough. Minji's voice cut through the argument like a crystal blade. The chamber fell silent. We are not here to fight among ourselves. We are here to decide how to respond to this message. Daehyun's glowing form materialized in the center of the chamber, summoned to present his findings. He had spent the last 3 days without rest, examining every piece of data about the beacon. Honored Council, he began, his light dimming respectfully. "I have studied the Terra myth for most of my life. I have examined ruins on 14 different worlds. I have read fragments of texts that survived from the old empire. And I can say with certainty that humans were real." "Were?" Minji asked. "Past tense. Were real are real. I believe they never died out. I believe they left." Hyunsu laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the chamber. "And I suppose you have proof of this theory?" "I do." Daehyun's form brightened, projecting images into the air above him. "These are genetic markers found in 3 different species within our collective. Markers that suggest ancient contact with humans. Crossbreeding, perhaps, or genetic modification. Either way, humans were here. They lived among our ancestors." "That proves nothing," Hyunsu argued. "Old DNA doesn't mean they exist now." "You're right," Daehyun agreed. "But this does." The image changed, showing military records from 3,000 years ago. Battle reports, ship logs, death counts that climbed into the millions. The old empire tried to enslave a refugee fleet of humans. The humans were fleeing from their dying sun, desperate and weak. The empire saw easy prey, but the humans fought back with such ferocity that the empire lost 1/3 of its military in a single year of war. The chamber filled with whispers. Minji watched as fear spread across the faces of the council members. They were beginning to understand. "The war ended when the humans simply vanished," Daehyun continued. "They disappeared beyond the galactic rim, into regions of space we still cannot explore. The empire was so humiliated by the conflict that they erased all records of it. They turned humans into myths so future generations would never know the truth." "If this is all true," Counselor Suman said slowly, "then we have a problem. These humans have had 3,000 years to advance their technology. 3,000 years to build and prepare. If they were dangerous as refugees, what are they now?" "That," Minji said, "is precisely what we must discover. The message offers us 2 choices. Peace or war. We must decide which path to take." "I vote for military action," Hyunsu said immediately. "Strike first before they can attack us. Destroy the beacon and any ships that come to investigate it." "I vote for diplomacy," Subin countered. "We should respond to their message and attempt communication. War should only come if peace fails." "And when they destroy us while we're talking?" Hyunsu demanded. "Then we will have tried," Subin replied. "But I do not believe humans returned just to destroy us. If they wanted war, they would have attacked already." "The beacon is not a threat. It's an invitation." The council divided quickly. 8 species voted for peace and diplomacy. 6 species voted for military preparation and defensive action. 3 species remained undecided, wanting more information before committing. Minji felt the weight of history pressing down on her crystal shoulders. She had lived through the human war, though she had been young then, barely 200 years old. She remembered the stories. The warnings. The fear in her elders' voices when they spoke of the species that refused to die. "I will share something with you all," she said quietly. "Something I have never told anyone in this chamber. I am older than you know, old enough to have witnessed the war with humans personally." Shock rippled through the council. Even Hyunsu fell silent. "I was there when the Empire tried to capture human colony ships. I watched as human fighters flying in small craft that should have been useless against our warships destroyed vessels 10 times their size. I saw humans board our stations and fight with a fury that terrified our warriors. And I watched as they protected their weak and wounded with such desperation that our soldiers began to question whether we were the monsters in that war." She paused, letting her words sink in. "The humans we fought were refugees, families running from a dying star. They had children on those ships, elderly, sick, and yet they fought like demons to protect them. Now imagine what they have become after 3,000 years of preparation. Imagine what they built while we lived in peace and comfort. Then you're saying we can't win a war with them?" Hyunsu asked, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "I'm saying we shouldn't try," Minji replied. "Not unless we have no other choice. These humans extended an offer of peace. They could have attacked without warning. They could have destroyed our border stations and vanished back into the dark. But they didn't. They sent a message. That tells me something important. They don't want war either. Or they're testing us," Hyunsu muttered. "Seeing if we're weak." "Perhaps," Minji acknowledged. "But I would rather be wrong about peace than wrong about war. A wrong choice in diplomacy might embarrass us. A wrong choice in war might extinct us." Ambassador Subin stood, her small form somehow commanding attention. "High Counselor, I volunteer to lead the diplomatic mission. Let me respond to their message. Let me meet these humans and determine their intentions. If they prove hostile, the fleet can be ready. But let us try peace first. Minji looked at the young diplomat with respect. Subin was risking her life with this offer. If the humans were hostile, she would likely be the first to die. The council must vote, Minji announced. All in favor of responding to the human message with a diplomatic mission, signify now. 8 voices called out in agreement. The same 8 who had voted for peace earlier. All opposed? 6 voices led by Hyunsu's roar. The motion passes, Minji declared. Ambassador Subin will lead a diplomatic convoy to the coordinates provided in the message. Captain Hyunsu, you will prepare the defense fleet, but you will not move unless I give direct orders. Is that understood? Yes, High Counselor, Hyunsu said through gritted teeth. As the council dismissed, Daehyun approached Minji privately. His light pulsed with worry. High Counselor, you didn't tell them everything, did you? About the human war? No, Minji admitted. I didn't tell them that we lost that war badly. I didn't tell them that the humans could have destroyed the Empire completely if they had wanted to. And I didn't tell them the most frightening part. What part? Minji's crystal body dimmed with remembered fear. The humans we fought had been fleeing for decades. They were exhausted, low on resources, protecting civilians. They were at their weakest point, and they still nearly destroyed us. Now they've had 3,000 years to recover and build. Daehyun, I don't think anyone in this galaxy truly understands what's coming. The humans in the legends were terrifying, but the humans who sent that beacon? They're something else entirely. Outside the council chamber, the response to the human message was being prepared. Ambassador Subin boarded her ship, accompanied by a small diplomatic team. They would travel to the coordinates and attempt first contact with humanity. None of them knew what they would find. None of them could imagine what humanity had become in 3,000 years of isolation, but they were about to find out. Ambassador Subin's diplomatic ship drifted through empty space, alone and vulnerable. The coordinates given by the human beacon had led them here, to a region of space that showed nothing on their sensors. No planets, no stations, no ships, just void and darkness. 3 hours had passed since their arrival. 3 hours of waiting and silence. Ambassador, her pilot said nervously, should we return? Perhaps this was a mistake. Subin's gills fluttered as she breathed, her aquatic body requiring special environmental controls on the ship. She stared at the empty space before them and felt doubt creeping into her thoughts. Had this been a trap? Had Hyunsu been right? Then reality itself seemed to tear apart. Space rippled like water. The stars twisted and bent in ways that hurt to look at, and suddenly, where there had been nothing, there was something massive beyond comprehension. A space station materialized before them, so large it blocked out the stars. It was at least 50 kilometers across, covered in technology that their sensors couldn't begin to understand. Weapons bristled from every surface. Docking bays opened like hungry mouths, and power readings showed energy generation equal to a small sun. By all the ancients, the pilot whispered. It was here all along, Subin realized, her voice shaking. It was right in front of us and we couldn't see it. Their stealth technology is beyond anything we imagined. A voice came through their communications system, speaking perfect collective standard, the common language used by all species. Diplomatic vessel, you are cleared for docking. Bay 7. Follow the guidance lights. Any deviation will be considered hostile action. Do you understand? We understand, Subin replied, trying to keep her voice steady. We come in peace. Then you have nothing to fear. The ship moved slowly toward the massive station. As they approached, Subin saw other ships docked in various bays. Ships that looked fast and deadly, covered in weapon systems and armor, a military fleet hidden in the darkness, invisible to every sensor in the galaxy. How many ships were hidden here? How many more were scattered throughout space, watching and waiting? The docking procedure was smooth, professional. The moment their ship touched down, a welcoming committee appeared. And for the first time in 3,000 years, Ambassador Subin looked upon humanity with her own eyes. They were bipedal, standing on 2 legs. Their bodies were covered in flexible material that seemed part clothing, part armor. They had 2 arms, 2 eyes, and hair in various colors. But it was their eyes that struck her most. They held intelligence, yes, but also something else. Sadness, weariness, the look of beings who had seen too much suffering. A woman stepped forward, her movements graceful despite the clear military bearing in her posture. She wore simple clothes in dark colors, and her hair was pulled back in a practical style. "Ambassador Subin," the woman said, somehow knowing who Subin was without being told. "I am Yunji, Chief Diplomat for the Human Confederation. Welcome to Defense Station Meridian." "Thank you for receiving us," Subin replied, stepping off the ship. "I represent the Orion Collective. We received your message. We've been monitoring your transmissions," Yunji said calmly. "We know there was debate about whether to respond. We know some of your council wanted to attack us. We appreciate that you chose peace instead." The casual mention of monitoring their communications sent a chill through Subin. "You've been watching us?" "For over 200 years, Yunji confirmed. "We've observed your wars, your peace treaties, your expansion. We wanted to understand what the collective had become before revealing ourselves." A man joined them, older than Yunji, with gray in his hair and scars visible on his exposed skin. His presence commanded attention without him saying a word. "This is Fleet Admiral Jinho," Yunji introduced, "commander of our defensive forces." Jinho nodded but didn't smile. "Ambassador, let's be direct. You came here with questions. We'll answer them honestly. But first you need to understand why we returned." They led Subin through corridors that hummed with power. The station was a marvel of engineering, every surface showing technology decades ahead of the collective's best. They passed by rooms where humans worked at computers, trained in combat, studied star charts. The station wasn't just military. It was a city in space. Finally, they entered a conference room with a large window showing the stars. Yunji gestured to a seat designed for Subin's aquatic body. 3,000 years ago, Yunji began, humanity faced extinction. Our sun was dying, killed by cosmic forces we still don't fully understand. We had maybe 50 years to evacuate 11 billion people from Earth. We built generation ships as fast as we could. We sent colony expeditions to every world we could reach. It was chaos. It was desperate. It was the darkest time in human history. A hologram appeared in the center of the table, showing images of massive ships fleeing a dying star. Subin saw human faces in the images, faces filled with fear and grief. During our evacuation, Jinho took over the story. We encountered the old empire, the collective's predecessor government. We asked for help. We asked for safe passage through their space. We offered to share our technology in exchange for refuge. They tried to enslave us instead, Yunji said quietly. They saw vulnerable refugees and decided we would make good workers. They attacked our colony ships. They killed our people. They tried to steal our children. The hologram changed, showing battle scenes. Human ships smaller and weaker than the Empire's fleet fighting desperately. Explosions. Death, destruction. We fought back, Jinho said, and his voice carried steel. We were refugees, but we weren't helpless. We destroyed 1/3 of the Empire's military before we managed to escape beyond the galactic rim. Subin felt shame burning in her chest. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry that happened to your people." "It wasn't your fault," Yunji replied. "The old empire fell long ago. The collective rose from its ashes. You're different from them. We've been watching and we know this. But we needed to be sure before we returned." "Why return at all?" Subin asked. "If we hurt you so badly, why come back?" A new person entered the room, younger than the others, with excitement in his eyes that contrasted with the serious mood. "Because of this," he said, activating a new hologram. "I'm Dr. Kyungmin, by the way, head of Xenoscience Research." The hologram showed something that made Subin's gills freeze. It was a massive structure, organic and mechanical merged together. It moved through space like a living thing, consuming everything in its path. Planets, ships, stations, everything it touched was absorbed and destroyed. "What is that?" Subin whispered. "We call them devourers," Kyungmin explained. "An extragalactic species that consumes matter for reproduction. They destroyed Earth's sun. Not naturally. They did it deliberately, harvesting the energy. We didn't know it at the time. We thought it was a natural disaster. But we've been tracking them for the last century, and we've learned the truth." The hologram showed more images, a trail of dead solar systems stretching across space. Entire sectors of the galaxy turned into lifeless wastes. "They're heading toward the collective space," Yunji said. "They move slowly by galactic standards, but they never stop. In approximately 20 years, they will reach your outer colonies. In 50 years, they will hit your core worlds." "Why haven't we detected them?" Subin demanded. "Because they're still far away," Kyungmin said. By the time your sensors can see them, it will be too late to prepare. We know because we've been fighting them for decades. We've lost colonies. We've lost billions of people. But we've also learned how to hurt them. Jinho leaned forward, his scarred hands flat on the table. Ambassador, humanity returned because you cannot stop the Devourers alone. Neither can we. But together we might stand a chance. You're offering an alliance? Subin asked. We're offering survival, Yunji corrected. We don't want your territory. We don't want revenge for what the old empire did to us. We want to live. We want our children to have a future. And that means stopping the Devourers before they consume everything. Subin looked at the hologram, at the massive threat heading toward her people. Everything she had seen today suddenly made sense. The hidden fleet, the advanced technology, the 3,000 years of preparation. Humanity hadn't been hiding because they were afraid. They had been preparing for war. What do you need from us? She asked. Time, Jinho said. Time to integrate our fleets. Time to train your soldiers in our tactics. Time to upgrade your technology. The Devourers are coming, but we have 2 decades to prepare. If we start now, we can build a defense that might hold. And if the collective refuses the alliance, Yunji's expression hardened, then we'll return to the darkness and you'll face the Devourers alone. We'll survive because we've been fighting them for a century. We know their weaknesses. We've learned to hide from them, to strike and disappear. Your people haven't, they'll be slaughtered. The harsh truth hung in the air. Subin realized this wasn't just a diplomatic meeting. It was humanity offering the collective one chance at survival. I'll need to report this to the council, Subin said. We know, Yunji replied. We're giving you all our data on the Devourers. Scientific scans, battle reports, tactical analysis. Show your council the threat. Make them understand. Some won't believe it, Subin warned. Some will think this is manipulation. Then they'll die ignorant, Jinho said bluntly. We didn't come here to conver. The council chamber erupted into chaos the moment Ambassador Subin finished her report. Councilors shouted at each other across the circular room. Some demanded immediate military action. Others begged for careful consideration. The chamber that had stood for peace and order for thousands of years now teetered on the edge of civil war. High Counselor Minji watched it all with growing dread. She had known this moment would come, had feared it for 3,000 years. The data is real, Counselor Suman shouted, her crystalline form glowing bright with agitation. I've analyzed it myself. These Devourers exist. The math proves it. Something massive is moving toward our space. Or the humans fabricated it to scare us. Captain Hyunsu roared back. This is exactly what an invasion force would do. Create a fake threat so we welcome them with open arms. You're letting fear override logic, Ambassador Subin argued, her gills fluttering rapidly. I met them. I saw their station, their technology. If they wanted to invade, they wouldn't need deception. They could simply attack. Then why haven't they? Hyunsu demanded. Because they're not strong enough. They need our resources, our worlds. This alliance is just pretty words for conquest. The argument continued for hours. The council divided exactly as before. 8 species voted to accept humanity's alliance. 6 species, led by Hyunsu's Thoraxian bloc, voted to refuse and prepare for war against both humans and the supposed devourer threat. 3 species remained undecided, paralyzed by uncertainty. Minji finally called for order, her voice ringing like crystal bells through the chamber. We are at an impasse. The collective's charter requires unanimous agreement for major decisions. Without it, we cannot act. Then change the charter, Subin pleaded. High Counselor, you have the authority in emergencies. And I would be accused of tyranny, Minji replied sadly. No, Ambassador. If we are to move forward, we need consent, not commands. Hyunsu stood, his reptilian form imposing in the soft light. Then I propose an alternative. We send our own military investigation to verify the human claims. If they truly are peaceful, they'll allow our warships to examine their station. They'll see that as a threat, Subin warned. Then they'll show their true colors, Hyunsu replied. Either they're peaceful and will accept scrutiny, or they're lying and will attack. Either way, we'll know the truth. Minji saw the trap immediately. Hyunsu didn't want verification. He wanted conflict. He wanted to provoke the humans into a response that would justify military action. The council will consider this proposal, she said carefully. We will reconvene tomorrow. But Hyunsu had no intention of waiting. That night he gathered the 6 species who supported him. Together they commanded over 300 warships. Technically this was legal. The collective's charter allowed individual species to maintain their own defensive fleets, but using those fleets without council approval violated every principle the collective stood for. "We go now," Hyunsu told his assembled commanders. "While the council debates, we act. We'll investigate these humans and expose them for what they truly are. Invaders hiding behind lies." Commander Jiwon heard about the plan through her intelligence network. She immediately contacted Hyunsu, her 6 arms gesturing frantically on the video call. "Captain, this is madness. You'll start a war." "A war is already coming," Hyunsu replied coldly. "I'm simply choosing when it starts. The council hasn't authorized this action. The council is paralyzed by cowards who fear their own shadows. I'm protecting the collective whether they appreciate it or not. By attacking a potential ally," Jiwon's voice rose in frustration. "By eliminating a threat before it eliminates us. You can join me, Commander, or you can be marked a traitor. Choose." Jiwon chose. She refused to join Hyunsu's fleet, and she immediately warned the council. But it was too late. Hyunsu's 300 warships had already jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading toward the human station. Ambassador Subin frantically tried to contact the humans, to warn them of what was coming. But the communication frequency they had given her wasn't responding. Either the humans weren't listening or they already knew. Hyunsu's fleet arrived at the coordinates where Subin had met the humans. His ships formed a massive battle formation, weapons armed, shields at maximum power. "Human station, this is Captain Hyunsu of the Orion Collective Military. You will allow us to board and inspect your facility. Any resistance will be met with deadly force. You have 30 seconds to comply." For a long moment, nothing happened. Hyunsu smiled, thinking the humans had fled. Then space came alive with targets, ships decloaked around his fleet. Not just a few ships, hundreds of them. Sleek, deadly vessels that moved with precision and grace. They surrounded Hyunsu's formation completely, weapons aimed but not firing. A voice came over the communication channel. Fleet Admiral Jinho, his tone cold and professional. "Captain Hyunsu, you have made a critical error. Your fleet has entered human territory with armed weapons and hostile intent. Under our laws, this is an act of war. However, we are willing to show mercy. Power down your weapons immediately and withdraw. You have 30 seconds to comply." Hyunsu laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "You dare threaten me? I have 300 warships. You're outnumbered. You're outmatched," Jinho corrected. "This is your only warning." 20 seconds! Fire on my command!" Hyunsu ordered his fleet. 15 seconds, Hyunsu's weapons officers reported ready. Torpedo tubes loaded. Energy weapons charged. He had the advantage of numbers and surprise. "The humans couldn't possibly win." 10 seconds, fire! Hyunsu screamed. The battle lasted exactly 30 seconds. Hyunsu's fleet unleashed everything they had. Hundreds of missiles and torpedoes streaked toward the human ships. Energy beams powerful enough to crack planets lanced through space. It was the most concentrated firepower ever assembled in one place. Not a single shot hit a human vessel. Point defense systems activated on every human ship, moving at speeds the collective sensors could barely track. Missiles exploded mid-flight, destroyed by perfectly aimed counterfire. Torpedoes were intercepted and detonated safely. Energy beams were deflected by shields that seemed to bend space itself. Then humanity struck back. Weapons appeared on the human ships, weapons unlike anything in the collective's arsenal. Directed energy beams that sliced through shields like they weren't there. Railguns that fired projectiles at nearly the speed of light, punching through armor and hull with devastating effect. Electronic warfare systems that seized control of collective ships, turning their own weapons against each other. And through it all, the humans moved with perfect coordination. Every shot found its target. Every maneuver was flawless. They fought like they were a single organism with hundreds of bodies. In 30 seconds, 287 collective warships were disabled, destroyed, or captured. The remaining 13, including Hyunsu's flagship, found themselves boarded by human soldiers who moved through the ships like ghosts, stunning crew members and seizing control of critical systems. Hyunsu sat in his command chair, paralyzed by a stunning weapon, and watched as a human soldier approached. The soldier removed his helmet, revealing a young face marked by scars and cybernetic enhancements. "Captain Hyunsu," the soldier said in perfect Thoraxian language. Fleet Admiral Jinho sends his regards. He says you were warned. You chose not to listen. You will now face the consequences. Across the collective, every communication channel suddenly broadcast the same message. Fleet Admiral Jinho appeared on screens in ships, stations, and planets throughout the galaxy. People of the Orion Collective, I am Fleet Admiral Jinho of the Human Confederation. Today, a collective military force attacked our territory without provocation. We responded with the minimum force necessary to neutralize the threat. We did not want this. We came offering peace. But understand this clearly. Jinho's image was replaced by footage of the battle, footage showing just how completely humanity had dominated the engagement. We are not the refugees who fled 3,000 years ago. We are not the victims your ancestors tried to enslave. We have spent every year since that day preparing to ensure we are never hunted again. We have built a military force that can defend humanity against any threat, and we will use it if necessary. The image returned to Jinho's face. The choice remains. Stand with us against the Devourers or stand aside, but never ever mistake our desire for peace as weakness. We remember what was done to us. We have forgiven, but we have not forgotten, and we have learned our lesson well. The galaxy will never again see humanity as prey. The broadcast ended. The galaxy fell silent, stunned by what they had witnessed. In the council chamber, Minji closed all 7 of her eyes. She had known. She had tried to warn them, but no one had listened. Now they had seen the truth. Humanity had returned, and they were no longer refugees. They were warriors. And they had just shown the entire galaxy what that meant. Ambassador Subin watched the footage with tears in her eyes. Not tears of fear, but of relief, because she understood something that the rest of the council was just beginning to grasp. Humanity could have killed everyone in Hyunsu's fleet. They had the power. They had the justification, but they chose mercy instead. They disabled ships rather than destroying them. They captured rather than killed. They were powerful beyond measure. 3 months after what history would call the 32nd War, the galaxy transformed in ways no one could have imagined. Human technology began flowing into collective space. Not all at once and not without careful oversight, but steadily and surely. Ships that had taken weeks to cross the galaxy now made the journey in days. Shields that could barely withstand a single hit now deflected multiple strikes. Communication systems that delayed messages by hours now transmitted in real time across light years. But the most profound changes weren't technological. They were personal. Commander Jiwon stood on the bridge of her newly upgraded warship, watching a human tactical officer named Daeho explain their combat doctrine to her crew. She had volunteered to serve as the primary liaison between human and collective forces, a decision that had surprised everyone who knew her. The key to fighting Devourers, Daeho explained, projecting tactical displays in the air, is understanding that they learn. Every attack you make, they adapt to. Every weakness you exploit, they evolve past. So we have to think 3 moves ahead, constantly changing our tactics. A young collective officer raised his hand. But how do we coordinate changes across an entire fleet without the Devourers intercepting our communications? Daeho smiled. We use something humans developed during our isolation. Quantum encrypted neural links. Each ship's tactical officer can communicate instantly with all others through quantum entanglement. The Devourers can't intercept or decode it because there's nothing to intercept. The information doesn't travel through space. It just appears. Jiwon watched her crew absorb this knowledge with growing respect. 3 months ago, she had thought humans were either myths or threats. Now she worked alongside them daily, and what she discovered surprised her. They were people. Complex, contradictory people. They could be fierce warriors one moment and gentle teachers the next. They told jokes during tense moments. They showed pictures of their families to alien crew members who barely understood the concept of family. They cried when missions went wrong and celebrated when things went right. They were more alive than any species she had ever encountered. After the briefing, Jiwon found Daeho in the ship's small galley, drinking the bitter black liquid humans called coffee. That beverage smells terrible, she commented. Clicking her mandibles in what humans had learned was her version of a smile. Want to try it? Daeho offered. She did, and immediately regretted it. The taste was horrible. But Daeho laughed at her expression, and she found herself laughing too, a chittering sound that made other humans look over with grins. How do you drink this? She asked. You get used to it. My grandmother used to say coffee is proof that humans will consume anything if it makes them more alert. Tell me about your grandmother, Jiwon asked, settling into a chair designed for her insect body. Daeho's expression softened. She died 20 years ago. She was part of the first generation born in the dark zone. Never saw Earth except in pictures, but she never stopped telling stories about it. Blue skies. Oceans so vast you couldn't see across them. Animals running free. She made Earth sound like paradise. Do you think you'll ever return there? Maybe if we survive the devourers. If we can clean the radiation and restore the ecosystem. But even if we can't, we'll always carry Earth with us. It's not just a planet. It's a memory. An idea of home. Jiwon thought about this. Her species didn't have a homeworld anymore. They had evolved in space, on stations and ships. The concept of a planetary home was foreign to her. But she understood longing. She understood loss. I'm sorry we attacked you, she said quietly. You didn't, Daeho corrected. Hyunsu did. And we know the difference. Meanwhile, in a laboratory deep inside the combined research station, Dr. Kyungmin worked alongside Counselor Suman, studying devourer biology. The crystalline scientist and the human doctor had formed an unlikely friendship, based on mutual fascination with impossible questions. They're not actually alive in the traditional sense, Kyungmin explained, pointing at scans of captured devourer tissue. They're more like self-replicating machines made of organic material. Each cell functions as both a weapon and a factory. How did they originate? Suman asked, her crystalline form pulsing with curiosity. We don't know. Some humans think they were created as weapons by an extinct civilization. Others think they evolved naturally in the void between galaxies. Personally, I think there's something worse. I think they're what happens when a civilization tries to become immortal, by converting itself into a self-sustaining system. They succeeded too well. Now they can't stop consuming because consumption is all they are. That's horrifying. That's why we have to stop them. Not just for us, but for every civilization they'll encounter after us. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting to prevent this from spreading further. Ambassador Subin traveled between human and collective space constantly, building bridges between cultures. She discovered that humans had a talent for understanding other species' perspectives. Maybe it came from being refugees who had depended on cooperation to survive. Maybe it was something inherent in their nature. Either way, it made diplomacy easier. She was in a human settlement called New Terra when she first saw humanity's true military might. Fleet Admiral Jinho had invited the council leaders to visit, to see what humanity had built in 3,000 years of isolation. What they saw broke every conception they had held. 7 massive shipyards orbited a fortified planet, each one larger than most collective space stations. Inside those yards, ships were being constructed at an industrial pace that seemed impossible. Not just warships, but colony vessels, research ships, medical frigates, supply carriers. An entire civilization's infrastructure being built simultaneously. How many ships do you have? High Counselor Minji asked, her ancient eyes wide with shock. Our current operational fleet numbers 10,347 vessels, Jinho replied calmly. That's not counting civilian ships, which number in the hundreds of thousands. We've been building for 3 millennia, Counselor. We've had time to perfect our production methods. But what struck Subin most wasn't the military might. It was what she saw when Jinho took them to the planet's surface. Cities full of life. Parks where human children played alongside alien visitors. Markets where humans sold art, food, music. Libraries full of books in hundreds of languages, human and alien both. You're not just warriors, she said to Jinho. We never were, he replied. We're survivors who learned to fight because we had to. But that's not all we are. We're artists and scientists and parents and dreamers. War is what we do when we must. Living is what we do the rest of the time. The alliance solidified quickly after that visit. Species that had resisted began to understand. Humanity wasn't a threat. They were refugees who had become strong enough to protect themselves and others. That was all they had ever wanted. Then the Devourers arrived ahead of schedule. A forward scout element appeared at a border colony called Talvora, home to 2 billion Whisperkin. The colony's defense fleet engaged immediately, but they were overwhelmed in minutes. The Devourers were exactly as the humans had described. Massive biological ships that consumed everything they touched, growing larger and more powerful with each world they ate. Captain Jiwon commanded the nearest response fleet, a mixed force of human and collective ships. She received the distress call and immediately calculated that they were 3 days away at maximum speed. 3 days to cross the distance while 2 billion lives hung in the balance. We can't save them all, her navigator said quietly. No, Jiwon agreed, but we can save some. And some is better than none. Prepare for combat jump. The journey took 72 hours of hard flying, pushing engines beyond their recommended limits. When they arrived at Talvora, the colony was under siege. 3 massive devourer ships were systematically consuming the planet's surface while defending against the colony's desperate resistance. All ships, Jiwon broadcast to her fleet. We cannot win this fight. Our objective is evacuation, not victory. Draw their attention, create openings for civilian ships to escape. Humanity taught us that saving lives matters more than destroying enemies. Today we prove we learned that lesson. The battle was brutal. The devourers adapted to every tactic, every weapon. Ships that tried to get close were absorbed and consumed. Energy weapons that worked initially became useless after the first few shots. It was everything the humans had warned about and worse. Jiwon's fleet lost 40% of its ships in the first hour. But they held the line. They created the openings they needed. And the civilian evacuation ships launched one after another, carrying survivors to safety. In the battle's darkest moment, 3 human ships suffered critical damage. Their engines failing, weapons offline, shields collapsing. The devourers moved in for the kill. "This is Captain Daeho," came a voice over the fleet channel. The same human who had taught Jiwon's crew tactics. The one who had shared coffee and stories about his grandmother. "My ship is finished. I'm going to make it count. Tell my family I died protecting people who needed protecting. That's all anyone can ask." "Daeho, wait," Jiwon shouted, but he didn't wait. His damaged ship and 2 others accelerated directly into the largest devourer vessel, ramming at full speed. The explosion, "See?